Welcome to the Bridges of Meaning European community. Today you're going to listen to a conversation between myself and Felix. Felix is a fresh member of our community. In the first half of the conversation, we got to know each other, and he asked me why I feel that in Israel the meaning crisis is lesser than in other Western countries, and I went into depth to that more than other videos. And the second half of the conversation is where's more meat there is our struggle with the resurrection and what is science and the problem of objectivity. I think this second part is just tremendous. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. And once again, I remind you that it's probably better to listen to our conversation in higher speed, just because I try to mask my inadequacies in speaking in English. So enjoy the conversation and goodbye.
Now I'm in contact with Bridges of Meaning, so I have to get used to it.
Yes, you have to. You need to get used to it. And although by this one phrase, I got lost, or you got lost. We both got lost. That happens.
So no, I guess.
Oh, you're back.
Okay. It works. Yeah. So the last words were I have to get used to it. So yes,
it's good. Get used to it, and by the few phrases that you said, I think your English is like enough to speak about meaning and the problems of meaning, and to be of use to each other, even though we're like this is our second language. So
yeah.
So let's go over like the protocol, how we usually talk with each other when we encounter a new members in the Bridge of Meaning. Are you a new member here? If yes, or if no, also how you came here, like how you come across this corner of the internet.
Yes, I'm new to that. I just shut down all my social media and WhatsApp and everything else, and was in a little meaning crisis. And after a while, I stumbled into Jordan Peterson and that stuff. I guess.
Was it long ago, or it's something during the pandemic?
I guess 3 to 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and before that, I read some German authors that had a similar direction than as Jordan Peterson. Yes, it was about Carl Jung and deep psychology and Bible and blah blah blah. Yeah. Yes, and after a while I started a little blog. I have a science background. I'm a food chemist, and I study now. I'm now on medical school, so I'm doing my second studies.
Yeah, you want to connect the two of them, or not at all?
I guess it took me 2 science studies to understand natural sciences really.
Yes.
And now I'm reaching out to theology, spirituality.
No, I'm asking. I'm asking if you want to connect the two of them as a food chemist, so it's basically food engineer, and the fact that you are now doing like a MD, a medical doctor. Do you want to connect the two of them, those two branches of your studies?
I guess I just want to become a doctor. I live in a very rural area, and I didn't know how to get a job here as a food chemist, so I just started medical school. Yeah, and the pandemic helped me to do that online. That was just by accident.
Yeah. Where are you from Germany? Like, rural place, which is.
I live in the Black Forest.
Forest, okay.
I live in a little town, 7,000 people. So that's very small.
Yeah, it's very small. Yeah. Even compared to Israeli size, it's a very small place. That's true.
Yeah, and where was I? Yes.
And it's interesting that contrary to Americans and maybe to more rural Europeans, you didn't thought about moving out and changing a place of living. Because in America, if you don't have a place to work in Dakota, you just move to, I don't know, to Arizona or to New York. And that's then the opportunities to participate in modern life will be greater. And you chose not to. You chose to study something really, really hard, but in order to stay in the place that you lived in, which is very unique.
I guess it's because my social network is just here. My wife comes from here. I come from here, 10 kilometers away. I love the people around here. They are not very modern or postmodern. They are more traditional, but I love that. But I try to influence just my local area and to not lose to the contact to the people I grew up with.
Yeah.
I guess
I understand that. I just pointing with that it's not common in the modern world to stay in the same place, because we with modern eyes we see the place that we grew up in as a corrupting place, not sufficient enough, a place who hold us down or closes on us, something like that. And there's wanting to burst out and go to another place. Like I'm also from a very, very small village in the south of Israel, and all I wanted all my life is go to a country where they speak normal English and not Hebrew. And part of those wants was to move to Tel Aviv. So I lived in Tel Aviv for 10 years and been is like in the big city. So for me to hear the changes that you undertook on your life to stay in that place is different. And I just wanted like to explore that a little bit with you.
Of course. I've been in Tel Aviv 4 years ago. Yeah, I visited it, and I was in Jerusalem as well and in Bethlehem. So I have this little snapshot of these 3 cities, and it was very interesting to experience the differences.
Yeah, what jumped to you? Like what was like really apparent to you that said like, oh, that's completely different, or completely took you out off back?
Tel Aviv was like a mixture of Berlin and, do you know Freiburg in Germany? It's a little town, but very cosmopolitan and green. And that came to me when I visited Tel Aviv, and was in a stark contrast to Jerusalem, which I also loved because
what is the contrast culture that you saw?
I saw this very traditional people everywhere in Jerusalem. I guess that's because it's a religious world capital city.
And a lot of people, religious people, gravitate toward there. I worked as a bartender for a few years in Tel Aviv, and I had a customer who said about Tel Aviv something like that. He said it's like a Caribbean city, but without the crime. And I said like, okay, I can see that. So there's like always the atmosphere of usually you move in Tel Aviv during the night because it's much more cooler and not that hot, especially in the summer. So, but when you have crimes, which is not good. So I really like that description by this customer. And how you, like, did you came from a religious background? What specific thing in topics and like Jordan Peterson and and those kind of questions brought you to this place, to our corner?
Yes. Right after the Protestant Confirmation, I guess I was about 14 to 15, something like that.
Yeah. When you were a teenager. Yeah.
I developed. I grew up non-religious, but I did the confirmation, and as a teenager, I developed this belief in a traditional God, like it is preached in a church. But right after studying my natural science studies, that fell apart very quickly. And after that, I was about 5 to 6 years very nihilistic, atheistic, in an aggressive manner. I tried to convince all the people around me in this little town of their stupidness. But that obviously didn't make me happy. After a while, I came back from my, I don't know how to say it. I wanted to meet the people again, eye to eye. So I started to question my beliefs. And I think atheism is also a belief system. And began to search, and after that I read some authors which covered the topics like Jordan Peterson, and after that I stumbled in John Vervaeke, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, and that made sense to me.
Yeah, you watched all of the series of the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis?
I wouldn't say that I understood everything, but I watched it completely.
Okay.
And nothingness and dealing with nothingness and meditation, that gave me some, I don't know, luminosity back. And that's the ground I built up again, Christian belief, but on another ground.
Yeah. And I understand it. There is, it's very interesting how different members of our community come here, because some come from Vervaeke, some coming from Peterson is just the beginning, but all of them coming through a specific person. If it is Peugeot, Vervaeke, Van der Clay,
you name it.
Probably because of this conference that we're having in Landau, because of Burn Power, because you also will bring new people into the community.
I started a little blog about Christianity and metamodernism. I read a lot of Ken Wilber, also integral theory about stage development of personality and societies and blah blah blah, all this kind of stuff. And after that, Matthias wrote me about Bridges of Meaning, and I didn't know Paul van der Clay, and I didn't know.
How did you know about Matthias? Like, how do you know Matthias?
He just found me on Twitter. It was about 2 weeks ago. So
really?
I was just alone with my little blog. I just started to write it. Nobody was interested in it. I think I have 40 followers on Twitter.
Listen, this guy, I am admiring Matthias. Like, he's so meticulous.
He's very active.
Yes. And like, I knew about the fact that, okay, he organizing he's a true sheep herder. He bring there's somebody here, and like bring them all together. I didn't knew that he actively went and searched people in Germany who is on this kind of journey, the same journey, and just bringing them actively to the community. That's
he told me
impressive.
That he found my little account after 2 hours search. So he's really active.
Yeah, he's very, very dedicated. Wow. I'm now more in awe of Matthias than I was before. And before it was pretty high.
So all that estuary stuff and the specific vocabulary that the community uses, that's very new to me. So
yeah, one thing that I do afraid of our community, and maybe people like Matthias, I'm afraid of losing them. And why I'm afraid of losing them? Because now we are kind of in a transition in the Bridges of Meaning way of breaking the big community to a regional places. So it will be like more of a US, more of a Europe thing, and maybe inside of Europe there'll be more division into languages. And I'm afraid that that if I'm not related, because why I'm thinking like that? Because I'm in a region who is not part of the meaning crisis movement, let's call it. I have theories why I think in Israel there's less meaning crisis. And also it's not technically the same as part of the West, because it's not Christian, it's Jewish. Although it's built upon a lot of Christian assumptions, the state of Israel, nationality in general, it's a Christian development.
Why do you think that there's no meaning crisis in Israel?
I think there's less, much less. And there is few reasons, which I mentioned in my video with when I spoke with Matthias and Paul van der Clay took the video up. I mentioned 3 reasons, but probably there is 4 reasons. One is the constant struggle against an adversary. So you have constant war, constant battle. It's structuring the society in that manner that there is a point of resistance to the society. So you grew up, the flag is actually a symbol of pride. It's something that like connects you to something, and then you go to the military. Not everybody goes to the military. There's so many exceptions that it's probably only 55% of the citizens go to the military. But still, let's call it all people go to the military, or the majority. And you go through this experience which is common to everybody and sucks. And that's important. If it's annoying to everybody and when everybody went through it, it's unionize people together. So that's one thing. The second thing is birth rate. So Israeli has a very high birth rate, and the country is full of children. So, and children as such, they bring you a new glasses to look at the world. So it's much easier to renew the old in a new form when you have children around. And I experience it with my nephews. I have 3 nephews. I don't have kids and I'm not married, but I have 3 nephews, and they all the time that like they asking questions about the world, and I need to think about an answer that a 7 or 13-year-old could understand. And it forced me to rethink a lot of those elements that I said already to myself. Yeah, I understand that. So kids in general bring this element, and Israel still have a high birth rate. The third element is the most elusive, and it's the connection between the government and the religion. There is a weird union between of them, and the holidays are so intertwined with Israel and the city in general that it's hard even to say, no, this is like a religious holidays. Like, no, they are all a country inclusive holidays. You have and the holidays are very they structure to all the members of the community. So the structures for kids, the structure for adults. You have, for example, Passover. Pesach, which
Yeah.
is like, it's, you can't buy bread, but it will be there is only Russian stores you can buy bread, and Arab stores where you can buy bread. They exist. They're not a lot. Most of the people that still eat bread like buy a lot of bread before that and stick in the refrigerator. So the fact that you cannot go, you go to a shop and you have to have a Coca-Cola that kosher for Passover.
It interrupts your thinking and
exactly. It interrupts your routine.
Yeah.
And then you have shelves that they don't just take out the things, the products. They put a big sign and like nylon all over this section, like, don't touch that. It's not.
We were in Israel during Pesach, so we saw all that.
Yeah.
And we lived in an Airbnb during that, and he was a devoted Jew, so everything was.
Yep, you just ate matzah and
scripture says it. Yeah.
And that's just one example. You have the other example of Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Remembrance, where you're supposed to say forgiveness for your sin, which is in September. And this is a very unique holidays because there is no traffic anywhere in Israel. So the images that you have from Corona, this is happening once a year in Israel. No traffic. You can, most of the people go on bicycle on freeways just because you can. So there is like this, again, interruption, a religious interruption to the mundanity of life. So the religious element is very, very intertwined in Israel as well. And the last thing, I had 4 points, but I don't remember maybe my last point. Yeah, probably maybe my last point is the fact that it's still a new country, so there's not oldness to it. But I don't know how to expand on that too much. So let's say 3 points, main points that I think the meaning crisis is less in Israel. And so I'm afraid that when there will be a segregation of our community to regions, I will left out without a region, because the German place and server won't be available to me because I don't speak German. That's like, and I will lose, let's call it, lose Matthias to the German community.
Yeah.
Understand, like my afraiding of this. So in a sense, I am experienced in the Bridges of Meaning community this element of globalization and separation, because I want globalization in the Bridges of Meaning, because then I'm connected to everybody. But I understand that it's very hard to build communities on general, like, globalization, because we need a physical touch, we need a physical reality. But I am isolated in Israel out of the Bridges of Meaning community. So the problem that we have in the whole global world, like what we do with countries, are we in the EU, or we separate in different countries? Are we part of the West, or it's a good thing that Russia is now out of the West, or something like that? Those kind of questions place themselves on a higher level and on a smaller level as well, as we have with Bridges of Meaning.
Yeah. So I think we need both directions. I'm very happy to have found Bridges of Meaning, because now for 2 weeks I'm not alone anymore.
Yeah.
And but I think I want to stay at home, and I want to change things at home, and I want to initiate discussions at home, because the churches are in a crisis. I see that at home in our little 7,000 people town, and I think
they don't know how to ask questions, and they don't know how to listen to the blabbering of people while they're thinking of an answer.
Yeah, because of Bridges of Meaning, I 2 days ago I wrote an email to a pastor, Protestant pastor, and I asked him if he's interested in trying to connect medicine, family medicine, psychotherapists, and pastoral care in a network, so that we can find better solutions for the mental health crisis on a local level. So that is an idea that came up because of Bridges of Meaning and the estuary concept. I think it's very transformed.
How you connected those?
He didn't answer yet.
No, how you thought about it, how you connected the Bridges of Meaning estuary with those kind of treatment?
I think the estuary concept, I don't understand it really good, but I think it's about enabling contact between people who aren't anymore connected to the church, but are somehow on the search, or feel anxious or lonely or depressed or something like that. And the rich tradition that comes out from the churches, and the spirituality that comes out from the churches. Am I right?
In a sense, yes. We can look at the estuary from many angles, but you are right in one sense, yeah.
And I thought maybe we could connect the professional sections that are dealing with mental health issues, and maybe pastoral care on our local level is interested in dealing with mental health in a secular manner, but with a religious background.
Yeah, well, I do think it's an interesting way of exploring. One of my friends that I acquired from the Bridges of Meaning is an older gentleman from the UK, and his father was part of the Christian Science movement and the Christian healing movement. Mm-hmm. So he was and participated and performed quite a lot of healing, like religious healings. I have no idea how even to approach this topic, like, because I still in the scientific mindset, and like, what do you mean that you approach to healing from a Christian point from a Christian point? But there is a precedent in the Christian scriptures how to perform healing. Is everything on the scientific basis? No. Is some of that works? Probably yes. Just because they are probably found some stuff who are working. So I look at it more like a Chinese medicine. It will maybe take an enormous amount of research to find the reason why this vial that you drink with, I don't know, with some tea and rub your back is helping you with giving more babies to the world. Who knows? But maybe it works in some manner, and the research will take much longer than the fact that it just works. And I'm sure in Christian tradition there's a lot of that. A lot of that.
As a working hypothesis, I see it from a medical perspective, and I say religion is a psychotherapeutical application of traditional symbols. So,
can you unpack that, please?
So I think that the symbols evolved, Christian or Jewish or whatever religion, symbols are evolved from humanity itself. So they are deeply rooted in our psychology. They are not nothing.
Mm-hmm.
even though they are not magical connections to something transcendent. And I think that's the confusion that happens always between traditional Christians and, I think,
and how those symbols is connected to health.
Yeah, I think it mediates stress, and stress is not very healthy. I think we see that in the upcoming of shamanism in hunter-gatherer societies, and we see that in this complex world religions like Islam, Christianity, and everything else. They stabilize individual psyches and societies as well.
Yeah, it looks to me that symbols, especially traditional symbols, they survive if they reflect a reality of the world.
Yeah.
And when you align yourself with those symbols that reflect the reality of the world, you are less sick. And I unfortunately, you use the term stress, which I think is one of those modern terms that we just, everything we don't know, it's like, it's stress. We don't know stress. So like everything is stress. And I do wish for us to, in the future, try to maybe break it down more, unpack it more. So, yeah, who knows, like you're suffering because you don't have enough God in your life. So maybe you should have some God pills. Something to that effect. But the estuary as the estuary, when I was thinking about it, there is a few interesting effects. And as well, I'm hesitant because the estuary is kind of a, first of all, the way that you described it is, and the way I think there is a problem in Christian thought about secularism and so atheism and religious, that there's two completely separated worlds. At least from modernistic point of view. In Hebrew, for example, in Judaism, again, I'm stressing, I consider myself a Christian, although I grew up in Israel. So I know a lot about the Jewish tradition, although I still think that I'm a Christian. I consider myself Christian. So in Israeli tradition, in Jewish tradition, the way that you talk about you became an atheist and you became a religious person is by those two phrases. When you say about something, oh, he returned with a question, it means that he became secular. And when you tell us about somebody who became a religious person, you say, oh, he came with an answer.
Yeah.
So in a sense, you are questioning God, or you coming with an answer to God. That's all. So in a Jewish perspective, both of those, you still under God all the time. It's just your relationship to him. You questioning him.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
So if you're questioning him, you're a secular person. Like I don't want to deal with that. And that's what Paul von der Clay is saying about Sam Harris. That Sam Harris is with a certain morality, a religious morality, just like saying, no, I just don't believe in this God. So he's with questions towards God. Who are you? Why should I believe in you?
So he's involuntarily like how is it called? A negative theologist.
No, he's in a Jewish tradition, he will be a seeker.
Okay.
That's all. That's all. Yeah. And the other person, the person who kind of, we maybe call it find God, but at least find some answers to God. Yeah. And that's I think a very healthy perspective to take to Christianity in general, in a whole. There is no such a thing of being outside of the Christian. If you are a Westerner, you're probably Christian, as Tom Holland tried to argue for us. Have you read Dominion and the argument?
No. I heard John Vervaeke say that we can't understand Western culture without reading the Bible.
Yeah.
And I guess is it about that?
Tom Holland's argument is that secularism is Christianity. That's basically his point. But yes, and the estuary protocol, or at least the estuary idea, is that we are coming to this room, people who have questions for God and people who are formulating answers to God, is sitting in the same room and having a conversation with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not people who want to become religious or people who will become religious, like not at all. So there's like a lot of atheists and they're welcome to our community, and like, sure, there's no problems in that at all.
Yeah. And that's great.
And that's great. That's great. The basic principle.
Yeah.
And I when Paul mentioned it, that some of the estuaries that started in the US started in churches, and a lot of the churches were trying to like make a certain propaganda at the end of the estuary for people to come to the church. Mm-hmm. And like for us, the Bridges of Meaning guys, like no, keep it up, keep it out. You don't, like, if the person wants your church, he will approach you and ask for it.
Yeah.
If he's not interested, don't even mention the fact that, like, not church, not religion, not God. Like, don't use that kind of things with him, because it's not part of his structure yet or thinking yet. So just don't. And that's one of the main thing that Paul van der Klee is acting in our community. He's not pushing God on anybody, and he's a pastor, and that's put a huge precedent for how we should be, how churches and religious people should behave toward a community of seekers. That's who we are, Bridges of Meaning.
I recently heard say a German theologist that not everybody needs to be a Christian, and he made the same point. Yeah, he's a pastor, and he said he made that clear. So his aim is not to evangelize. How's it in English? Everybody. So,
but what does he means by saying not everybody need to be a Christian? Because by the worldview that I presented, if you are, well, you have to be part of certain religion. There's no such thing. So if you are not Christian, then you are what, Gnostic?
I don't know if people are happy to hear that they are called Christians if they don't consider themselves Christian. I think that's sometimes a problem with people like John Vervaeke, who say everybody is in principle a Christian. There are many people who say that they are not Christians anymore, and that's a claim we should
unpack and probably
just take as it is. Yeah,
I don't think it's just really hard question what it means for you to be a Christian.
Yeah, it's an open thing. It's almost like God.
I just want to bring another concept from Russian, because I'm Russian. I was born in Russia and I came to Israel when I was 5. So my mother tongue is Russian, although it's less, is weaker than my Hebrew, but still. And in Russian, there is this concept which means unchurched. So a lot of people who dislike the church, and especially right now, there's like a lot of Christians who dislike the patriarch and the Moscow church, but not just now. It could be even in Soviet times when you couldn't come to the church. They will call themselves the unchurched. So you're saying, I'm a Christian, but unchurched Christian. So a Christian without a church. Mm-hmm. Something like that, like a one who's not going to the church. I think there is some harm in that concept, but there is also some usefulness in it. Because in the Gospels, there is this element of Jesus saying, well, the church is my bride. So you cannot be without a church and be a Christian. It's like something wrong about that. But in the Russian mind, it still doesn't. You still can be a Christian because the church is a human institution, and it can be so corrupt and so not accessible that sometimes you need to be a Christian without a church.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting way of how also in this movement of ours, a lot of people who are consider themselves Christian or returning to the Christian faith, but just don't feel comfortable maybe going to churches, or there's no churches near them. I have a problem. I kind of consider myself an Orthodox. I don't have churches near me. Jerusalem is really, really far from me. And so I go to a Catholic church, which is fine. Yeah. So there's but there's still there's a lot of conflicts and there's a lot of differences in that. And we need to understand how to solve those differences in the modern world somehow.
Yeah. What do you think about Viveki's religion that is not a religion? I didn't understand what he means by that.
What did you got from that? Maybe I can build on top of what you understood.
Okay. I really didn't understand it. I heard the claim very often, but I don't know what to make of it, because I think religions need a traditional core. And to build a religion that is not a religion, I guess, lacks a traditional core. And what's that? Is it just dialogos? Just a practice that goes in an invisible way through the society? I think that's not sufficient. So I think we need to hold on to traditional religions and transform them.
Yeah, because you talked about symbols, and I agree, but John, I think, managed to connect the Trinity really well to certain cognitive functions that we have.
Okay.
And in that sense, so you have the logos, which is the Son, and you have the all things that created, which is the Father, with all the things that is presented to us in such a huge bombardment that we need to sort from all of that allness of the world. We need to sort from that certain elements, which we use the Son, the logos, to do that. But it's not enough just to sort the thing out. You need also to experience them from participation, and that's the Holy Spirit. So those elements, I think John managed to bring to a cognitive level, kind of. And it sounds to me that he talking about humanism, basically. Like a moral structure that grounded in rituals, and there is a certain involvement of understanding and participating for rituals and understanding about the certain world, which is about certain moralities in the world. So it sounds like a humanistic plus thing. And and I think I'll agree with your criticism that symbols is lacking. I don't know, and like, have you delved into Jonathan Pajot's work?
A little bit. I watched about 10 to 20 videos of him. Yeah.
I think he's a really good contrast.
Yeah.
To John and to his, although they working together quite a lot, but still he's this Peugeot's element of symbolism and the importance of symbols and how they play in the choosing of rituals is a very important element that I think the Viveka religion with other religions is lacking. Because when you take a religion without a religion and give it a symbolic structure, stories, poems, some interesting ideas and phrases from the old past, then it's just be a more like a reformed new religion.
Yeah, and it's grounded a little bit deeper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like in the old stories. You can try to do that. I think there is a modern religions who try to like modernize those kind of elements and bring it to a modern time. And I think they will be unsuccessful. And that's because, I don't know, their story is not running so far back into the past. Something like that. I don't know why.
No,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, it's a new topic. So
go ahead with the new topic, because I have nothing to add about that.
Okay. There's one question that bothers me very often, and it's the resurrection of Jesus. When I discuss with Christians here in my hometown, it's all about the resurrection. Without the truthness of the resurrection, so that it was a dead body that rised up and walked around again, Christianity would be false. And I think that's a very important point in the discussion about new forms of Christianity, like symbolistic forms, like Jonathan Pajot talks about Christianity.
No, Jonathan Pajot stresses that a lot of the modern religions, or try to a new modern way of looking at religion, they taking the Jesus as a humanist, like his sermons, his approaches, the fact that he was crucified. So this is like the alive Jesus, which is not exactly Christianity, because there is a big element that is lacking, and this is the resurrection. And Jonathan Pajot stresses that this is very important. You cannot disregard it. And
agreed. Yeah.
And I am new to this concept of religious and religions in general. I grew up in a secular house. For me, it's very difficult to accept the element of resurrection and this other part. I try to approach it in the in maybe this element, fake it until you make it. Like, I don't
I
know.
do.
I don't want to understand. Don't explain me, because I just use my modernity to break your arguments apart. So I won't. I don't want to deal with that. I will just accept it as it was, as if it did happen, and hope for the best.
I do the same. I pray the rosary and blah blah blah. So there is this element in it, and I know, and the resurrection is very important for me. But I think I'm a natural scientist, so I want to know what happened there, and I dissected the body in the beginning of medical school, and I know what a body is, and
it still is a modernistic approach, Felix.
Yeah, it's very modernistic, but
because and Jonathan Pajot talks about it. The resurrection is the point where the symbolism and the story and the physical world became one.
Yeah,
it's a unique point in history, so we cannot approach it from one side.
Yeah, I think to believe that there was a dead body that came back to life after 3 days is also too simple.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important point. I think there was something 2000 years ago that we cannot explain in modernistic terms, but I think sometimes it's a bit too simplistic, explained in a traditional way, that there really was just dead body and then it came back and pushed the rock away, and then Christianity came to its rise. I think that's a bit too small. And I hear that very often in churches. And I think we don't know anything about reality and how it's connected to our minds and to matter and to space-time and everything else. And I think something of this big dimension happened 2000 years ago, and I can't explain it, but I think we shouldn't explain it too so simplistic that a modernist can't believe it anymore. Do you know what I want to say?
Yes, I'm doing right now a course in philosophy of science.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for me right now. My background, I studied for 2 years physics in university, then I left, and then after many years I started to study philosophy. So now I'm more of a philosopher than a scientist from the way that my mind is thinking, but I still have this, like I know a lot of the arguments that they're using in the scientific exploration, and 2 of my parents are scientists. And while I'm reading the text about the philosophy of science, I understand that it just there's 2 approaches, kind of, and the one approach is there's 2 approaches. One approach is that there is a concrete way of how science shows something concrete about the world. It's telling something true about the world. Objective true. Yeah. So there's like truthness in those statements. There's like different approaches and elements, and some people that there's different philosophical differences in that approach, but in general, there are some skeptics. So, but in general, they're saying something true about the world. And the more that I look at those arguments, I understand that it's coming a lot from hubristic analyze of the world or of your theories. You imagine that you understand something, and then you think you understand it. The second approach, and I think it's the Thomas Kuhn, the Structure of Scientific Revolution. This is very famous book from the 60s, where he's saying that basically science is just a human endeavor who progressing in time. So it's basically a human institution, and theories as human institutions who are just they are the reflecting reality. What do you mean? Why am I even saying that? Like, but still there's certain theories, there's certain approaches there. We can maybe trace the development through history and the historic development of theirs, but basically when you are becoming a scientist, you are going through this relevance realization, narrowing of relevance realization, to being a specific scientist of a specific period of time with the specific tools. So you are going through school and you're learning 21st century tools of how to do only with chemistry regarding food. And that's it. And you use the tools that is constructed and accepted by the people who are maybe a little bit higher than you in the hierarchy, your professors, but that's all. It's a representation of those tools in that specific time in universe.
Yeah. That gave me a little meaning crisis after I had after I had finished food chemistry. So I not only know what you're saying, but I can feel it.
You feel it.
Yeah. There was a lot of hubris during my first studies. I thought, now I can understand the world. I'm a bit smarter than everybody I know in my little hometown. But that was not the case. I think there's this big issue between subjectivity and objectivity. And I just read a book from, do you know Pierre Teilhard de Chardin?
Never heard of him. It's so fun to be speaking with Germans. You bring such a good authors that I never heard of. Say his name again.
Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. He was a French monk and paleontologist, and he was one of the most renowned paleontologists of his time. And he developed his own theories about his own theology because he was a scientist. And he makes it clearly, his book, it's, I think, the phenomenon of man in English. It's der Mensch im Kosmos in German, the phenomenon of man. And he writes clearly about subjective force in matter that's deeply rooted in matter from the beginning, that in the end resulted in our consciousness.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I'm not there where he explains who Christ was and what the resurrection was, but I think I will get some answers there I don't have yet. But he's a brilliant thinker. I read Paul Tillich, and I think Teilhard de Chardin is more interesting than Tillich. I don't know why, because I just read 1/3 of his book, but yeah, I think some answers will be there. And it's this big play between subjectivity and objectivity, and we don't know why this is so. Why is there subjectivity and objectivity? That seems to be a part of our universe, and we don't know why. Why is this separation?
Well, recently by the influence on Bernd Powers, the person who is going, to be in the festival, and I've been immersed in his videos and his ideas. And he's influenced a lot by Hans Hochmacher. He's from Amsterdam. He's an art professor, and there's Burns' point is that there is no such a thing as objectivity. So it's just not existed, because every encounter that society in large going with the world is going through an objective human. So even your scientific inquiries is still subjective. And
but why does that claim not lead to absurdity?
Exactly. I don't know because I tried to explain this point to my parents a few days ago, a few weeks ago, about doing one of the key people in the scientific revolution is René Descartes. And in the philosophy class, we had to read his meditations. And his meditations, the first meditation, when he breaks down everything, the last argument in the first meditation, when just before he destroys everything, he's saying, what if there is a demon who is covering everything that I see in front of my eyes, so it filters through him. So everything that I see is corrupted. So
it's like
I can
the brain in the tank, something like that.
Yeah, brain in the tank, like that's it. Just the world is coming to me corrupted. So what if that? And then he come to his conclusions and saying then I cannot understand nothing of the world. But what I can understand, and this is the second meditation, is the fact that there is somebody who is doubting. So there's the thing that is referring to itself, the fact that he's doubting, and then it means that he is this element who is doubting the self is existing. So this is the cogito ergo sum. I think if I doubt, it means that I exist, because there is this element of doubtness. And I thought that this is part of the problem of objectivity, because he's saying that is an objective thing, that is this element exists of objectively because he's noticing himself. But I'm saying no, it's more akin to the problem of the liar paradox. And you know about the liar paradox, that if you write this phrase is not true, then you don't know how to regard it. Yeah. So this is the liar paradox. Like you're saying something, though, if it's true, then it's not true. But how should I regard it? It's in the same manner, but it's like this is circular idea that it's a doubting thing that doubts itself, and Descartes lays out this objectivity in scientific inquiry all over. That's how we continued as people and scientists in the modern time, seeing that there is this objective truth. For Descartes, this was this small element. He tried to, from that, bring that God exists as well, but that's in a different manner. But still, this element of objectivity here, and Bacon tried to do that. And I don't think it's the case. I don't think it exists, the element of the objectivity at all.
Yeah. Did you watched some videos of Donald Hoffman. He's I think an evolutionary biologist, something like that. He ran some computer simulations with evolutionary game theory. And the normal claim is that the fittest animal is the animal who has the best image of reality. And Donald Hoffman's simulations crushed that and said the animal or the species that has all the information of reality will die. That's just the simulation, that's the result of his simulation. And he said that we are made by evolution to not see reality, but an image of reality that is sufficient enough to survive. And maybe that supports your claims that you made. So
not exactly, but it plays on the element of this demon, let's call it, that's covering our eyes, because this demon, this Hoffman is arguing in the same manner as John Vervaeke relevance realization, that you, in order to survive, you need to get rid of most of the stuff, most of the information.
Because it would be overwhelming and eat our resources we need for surviving. It's like, it would be like being on psychedelics while hunting.
I still think there is the problem, and maybe it's a not fair argument, but I'll do it to stress my point. There is a problem, like what I'm arguing is different. I'm arguing that there is no such thing as objectivity, and you are giving me a scientist who is bringing some data that's supposed to be objective about us. But I'm saying, no, it cannot be, because this person, this scientist is bringing a subjective element.
Yeah.
And we are trusting in him. So in rhetoric, which was my field of study in the university when studying philosophy, I study mostly rhetoric, language and rhetoric. And in rhetoric, there's appeal to authority that you use. And you use authority as making your points. So I think what you've done right now is appeal to specialists and saying, okay, he has authority of saying something, but he's saying something subjective.
You mean Donald Hoffman?
Yeah, Hoffman. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's exactly how I think science is working. It's working by appeal to authority. Of authority of person who have a subjective.
Yeah, that's correct. that's correct. And it was very helpful to find that out after my food chemistry studies. So
the problem is there is no such a thing as every exploration is an exploration of your own logos of the world.
Yeah.
And the more you do it yourself, the less unhappy you be. And that's the idea of being a scientist. You use your own divine logos that come from God, and you use it to analyze the things that God brought to you.
Yeah, and that's the point John Vervaeke makes. When we are stuck, a normal debate is not sufficient anymore. We need to do dialogos. We have to give up ourselves a little bit and just look at what emerges from the dialectic process between two individuals.
But exactly, that's what you said. It's when you yourself doing the science, you yourself sitting with the equations, with the research, the data, and trying to understand stuff. Doing a subjective element of extracting information. So it's a subjective things of you. And Vervaeke's dialogos coming into effect when you, this is when you brought new stuff from the objective, from the world that where the God existed. It's a subjective thing to you. When you encounter another scientist that also done this subjective research, then you be starting a dialogos between the two of you, and that this dialogos, this is science. The dialogue between the two subjective people who brought something from the world. This is science, not the fact that each one of them took something from the world.
Agreed. Totally agreed. Yeah, yeah.
And that's the point of Thomas Kuhn, that science is not the extraction of true information from the world. Science is the relationship between individuals who brought something from the world. Just Kuhn is very hesitant to say that it's subjective. This is my argument. But you can use his argument about what science is to say that, no, every single person brings a subjective element from, let's call it reality, to himself with his logos, and then sharing with each other.
Yeah. I recently read about queer theory, and there's the same principle that every new perspective needs to be included when you see it. So
say that again.
When you the aim of queer theory, I'm not very deep into it, but I think it's about that.
I just need a repetition for it to get into my mind, not because I didn't understand the words or what you said, or
the aim of queer theory is to integrate every new little perspective that you see in a society. So every little minority, every individual's perspective needs to be integrated into a whole view of everything. And I think that's the core idea of queer theory. And I'm not someone who hates queer theory or something like that. I'm not a modernist who fights against postmodernism or something like that. I'm interested in Foucault as well as in modernist thinkers. I'm not into that fight. So, and what you said about that is, it sounds to me like a little bit like queer theory, but not on a sociologist level.
You're right. You're right. The only difference, I think, that the fact that I think the only difference is that when you encounter with, as a scientist, you're doing this, like you're doing the research, and the research is subjective, but still it relies on logos.
The truth. And not just on including every
you just cannot dissect it. You cannot dissect what the logos and the truth you're bringing from the beyond.
That's what the critics of queer theory say, that you cannot just take in every perspective, because some perspectives are maybe not rooted in the logos.
And that's my point, that in the conversation between the scientists, when you are doing the science, when you're doing the, as you said, the thesis, the antithesis,
dialogos.
The dialogos, like the dialectic, let's call it, between the two members that trying to get their idea together. Then you get to sort. Then there is a sorting element to. I don't know, but there is a connectivity because it's going through the logos. There's a certain connectivity to truth. and to the real world.
But it's not objective.
It's a great criticism of my small theory that I conducted right now. It's really hard for me to answer why it's not like queer theory about a total subjective world. I just feel that it's because you use the intention and the logos. Can you use the attention and the logos to bring falsehood from the beyond?
I don't know. I think that logos depends on believing in it. I think you can prove that there is a logos. And I think that the uprising of monotheism was the first step to science, because science depends on believing in one reality, and that one reality is rooted in something that we can interact with. And I think that's logos. And we just can prove that it's there. I can't prove that it's there, but we rely on it and it works. And I think that's, for me, the best case for believing in something like God or logos.
Yeah.
What do you say about that?
I just wanted to ask a few things. Felix, how long did you prepare for this interview to be? I'll ask again. How long you willing to continue? Because we can continue for another hour easily, because it's very interesting to have a conversation. I'm just asking for time limits. Do you have time limits?
I think I have half an hour left.
Okay.
You?
Yeah. We can do another 20 minutes
I
easily.
Just want to waste your time.
No, not at all. I'm just. It's very difficult to set. Because we have a certain rituals and certain behaviors that we usually take with each other in the physical world, and it's very difficult to develop them online. We usually pick up on cues when somebody is uncomfortable and need to go away, either if it's for the bathroom or it needs to go just because it's boring or because it just need to go. So, but on online, it's very hard. I'm doing a conversation like with you, like a few times a week with different members who are going to the Landau.
It's my first conversation in my life about such a topic. So
excellent. I am glad I'm being the first. I at the beginning, when I've done my conversation with Matthias, and we publish it on YouTube on Render United, and I just throw away a challenge for all the people who are coming to the conference in Landau that we should meet beforehand, because then when there won't be as much relevance. There will not be the combinatoric explosions from new things that we got when we go to the conference, because I'll already know who you are. Like, I know a little bit your mannerism. It's not will be a new thing like, okay, hello, Felix, I now need to learn how to be with you. So the more encounters that we have online, the more meaning it will have when we'll meet each other in there. So I actually asked for other members, contact me, or I will contact you, and let's have a conversation. So that's what I've done meticulously for the last months.
I will repeat that with other members too. So
yes, please. I'll send you a list of few people who are will be in your alley, and you'll get a enjoyment of speaking with them. So I'll send you a list of those few members. I have one in particular, Stefan, that I'm having. He's our second conversation tomorrow, I think, or the day after. I forgot, you asked me something about logos, but I don't remember what it was.
I have my little theory that monotheism led to science, because only the belief in one reality that came up with monotheism led to the assumption that there was a reality that can be explored, and that it is connected and coherent, and and that it's contingent, that it depends on something in a whole.
Yeah, but monotheism is a belief in one deity and not many. So you're bringing the reality under one roof, kind of. And it's easier to explore this one roof.
And I think, but the logos in Greek philosophy developed independently from monotheism, I guess.
Yeah, and it's actually also developed in India. There is a quite substantial work and development in Hindu rhetoric. So there it's more or less very similar to Aristotle. It's just less clear. Because he was quite a brilliant guy, but they derived a very similar elements and very similar rhetoric as in the West, in the more or less the same time as the ancient Greek. So it's probably not. Well, it's hard to argue, but it's probably not connected to the Greeks, but maybe, who knows? It's not that far. And so especially when you're taking Alexander the Great into consideration, which is in the time of Aristotle. So
he had a very effective military.
And so he brought a lot of these ideas to India. So who knows? The concept of logos developed outside of monotheism.
And I think that we cannot prove that there is logos. I think we can just act like it was there and see the result from that acting.
I will tend to agree with that. There's certain, and because we cannot prove that there is logos, from logos coming a lot of our rules in mathematics, and especially in basic mathematics, which from them we can derive a lot of interesting thoughts that not that connected to the world, but although you pushed me to places where it's hard for me to think. There's a few elements in few rules in mathematics, basic principles that, like, from them you're supposed to derive
the axioms.
So in logic, if I remember correctly, there's like 5 of them that was said by Aristotle. So the causality, so like all Greeks are mortal. Socrates is a Greek. All Greeks are mortal. Socrates here is a Greek. It means that Socrates is a mortal. So that this is the causality. Then there is the third rule of exclusion, which means that can be or truth or false. There is no third exclusion. And then there's all the different elements of and, or, and not. So when you say not to an argument, then it goes to the opposite. It from truth make it false. Then there is the and there's the or. So those are like a very basic 5 rules of logic. And by constructing each of them, we think we can make sentences that can say something true about the world. But during the 20th century, there's a lot of, it's kind of started with Wittgenstein, but it's called the Linguistic Revolution. Mm-hmm. In the Linguistic Revolution, they came and they found a lot of phrases and a lot of elements that you cannot assign truth value or different elements of understanding them at all. Like, for example, to the word like stop or halt. Like is it true? Is it not true? It's a command. Mm-hmm. Or when the existing of the thing occurred after you say that. So this is Kuhn revelation, when you say something. Oh, like a judge will, or sorry, not a judge, a priest will say, not confirm, I pronounce you. Yeah, I pronounce you husband and wife. So by saying that, he creating a reality that didn't exist a moment before. So is the phrase true? It depends who said that, and which did it already been said or before it was said. So how do you assign the truth value to that phrase? Or a judge saying in a courtroom, I pronounce you're guilty or innocent. I'm saying the verdict is innocent or guilty. So the pronouncement of it is in time, in situation, without any truth value. So you cannot assign truth to it. So and it brought a lot of problems in the 20th century to our notion of logic and truth, because then we take those phrases and those elements in common language, how we can assign truth value to them? We cannot. So probably everything is relative.
Okay.
More or less. It's like a big jump, but there is it is a problem.
Yeah. And it has something to do with the discussions now about the language forming reality,
but the problem
about race and something like that.
The problem that I just laid out is because you take things objectively. So you looking at the phrase, how objectively is it true or false? You're using logic. What you are even saying, they're getting married. When the priest saying they get married, they married, and now it's true. Before that, it wasn't true. So it's an objective community-based truth, kind of.
Yeah.
So that's so those is the difference between the objective world through logic that doesn't coincide with the living world. There's the problems of objectivity, let's call it, or being in time or experience time, because when you bring to logic time, then it becomes not objective but subjective.
Yeah. I haven't thought about that until yet. No, I'm confused.
I really recommend Burn Power series on time.
Burn Power, okay.
It's really good. Anadromous. He go by the Anadromous on YouTube.
Time.
Which means fish that swim against the stream. So something like that.
Oh God, my brain.
Yeah, that's
I'm
okay.
learning for the final exams right now. I have them in October. So,
Felix, are you coming? You're coming to the Landau conference, right?
yes. You too?
Yes, I am.
Oh, that's great.
Which is very interesting for me. And what do you want from the conference? Like, what do you expect to get? Is not the wrong phrase. Experience is not the wrong phrase. What do you hope to achieve by meeting people from Bridges of Meaning and coming to Landau?
Yeah, I don't know quite. I think I'm very curious about Bridges of Meaning. I'm very curious about the internationality to that I'm not used. That's there, and I think I'm searching for answers how to implement better discussions about spirituality and meaning in a local community. And I think that's all. And I think a lot of the time I will just listen and be very curious. Yeah. What's your goal?
That's a good question. I answered this question before for different people and different members. I hope, for me, I think it's different. I hope this to make this community thrive, and by doing so, while I was doing so, I want to be involved in the community. And the reason I want to be involved in the community, because I don't want to be alone. And I felt alone most of my life. And
can feel that. Yeah.
And I don't want to continue to feeling that. In order to do that, I need to help the community to form itself.
Yeah.
And that's maybe why I said before that I'm scared that those communities will like segregate to their own languages and their own place in the world.
Yeah.
So I guess it's part of that. And that's why I'm so active, or trying to be so active, in the organization of this Landau. Although I'm not doing anything, I'm not organizing. This is Cassidy and Matthias that are doing everything. I just speak with people and I hope they have a good connection, and hope.
But you're doing a great job, because I'm a bit anxious about speaking in English. I'm a bit anxious about connecting online. I don't know if my little theories are stupid or not, and all that. And just speaking with you ameliorated that a little bit. So that's And
so excellent. Felix, I will connect you with other people. Feel free to have a conversation even in German. What I'm saying more or less, that we started a YouTube channel for not German, but EU Bridges of Meaning. I'm publishing those kind of conversation over there. First of all, I'm doing it very similar to Paul von der Clay. I'm publishing them unlisted, so you can watch them, but nobody else. If you say, yeah, sure, they can go public, I'll do that. Most of the members ask me to get rid of the name, or at least the family name, so I can do that as well. But if not, not. And I just edit small things, the beginning and end, like the introduction, and there's a person and I'm speaking to it, which is in the beginning, and it's always a shock.
Yeah.
But so you can decide, and actually, if you have conversation, I highly recommend you to record them, or the other person. I usually record with Zoom, and then you can send it to me, and I can upload it or not, which is whatever you want. So it's a very free way. Felix, thank you very much. I'll like, it will be, I will be so glad to meet you in person.
You too. Yeah. And thanks for your conversation. Yeah.
Thank you, Felix. Bye bye.